Could Apple actually discontinue the Mac Mini and the Mac Studio soon? Let's talk about it. All right, welcome back to my channel. So before you yell at me that this is clickbait, there's no way they're gonna get rid of the Mac Mini and the Mac Studio, hear me out for a second. I need your help understanding this data that I'm going to show you. This data is actually very shocking to me, and I don't know what's wrong with it, why it keeps coming back the same way after I check it time and time again. So I'm going to actually ask you, what is wrong with this data? I'm going to show you what are the Macs that Apple sells the most of, all right? What Macs do Apple sell the most of? The data is done by research companies, not by Apple, because they don't put that information out. But it's so far off that it makes me think if this data was true, they're going to discontinue the Mac Mini and the Mac Studio. And I'm going to show you why based on the data. Now, I'm also going to ask for help. I don't want this to be a clickbait video, and I don't want you saying, oh, this is not right. I understand it might not be, but I'm trying to understand, like, how could this even be on these reputable sites showing this data where it's so far off? And that's what we're going to kind of break down today. So give me your comments. Let's all break this down together. It's not a clickbait video. I'm asking you for help. But I want to show you if this data is true, the Mac Mini and the Mac Studio are in some serious trouble, and we all got to buy some. Otherwise, we may, in a couple years, miss them. All right. Really quickly, I'm going to just set this up and then we're going to move on. I'm trying to get through this quick. So let's look at my screen over here. I just want to break down first of all. So we all know here, if you look at this paragraph, iPhone, it makes up 52.1% of Apple's revenue. So we know the iPhone's king, all right? Mac over here, if you look down here, it's 10.2%. See right there? So about 1 in 10. So 10% of all Apple's revenue comes from Mac. So it's not a huge percent just to begin with. In comparison, if you go all the way down here to services, is up to, let me see here, almost 20% of their revenue comes from services now. So it's kind of services, iPhone, other things, and then, the Macs are kind of in there 10%, all right? Another graph I can show you here that kind of breaks it down. This is by business of apps. It says, let me just say source company data. If you look here, here's all the iPhones in blue down here. Here's all the services up here. You can see the big chunk. And green here is basically other hardware. This yellow is the Mac. See it right there, this little area right there. So it's a smaller percentage of all of Apple's revenue. Let's just set that up, right? Now, this was maybe a couple months ago I showed this, or maybe 6 months ago I showed this. This is a research done, and take a look at my screen for a second. It's done by Consumer Intelligence Research Partners. See this? And they did this kind of study where they sampled thousands of people, and then they broke down the data to see what kind of Macs people were using and how many of each they were using. Now, again, this is not the best. Apple's not giving us this data. It's not the best way to get this data, but we're going to see why is the data kind of shaping this way. This is very interesting to me. So we look over here. It says, if you got to look at these categories, it says number of units, I guess, that are out there. If you look down this, these equal 100, 26, and 74. So it's saying 26% of all Macs are desktops, all right? 74% of all laptops right here are going to be, or 74% of all Macs are laptops. That actually makes sense to me, right? More laptops are sold than desktops, all right? Then over here, though, is the break. Well, let's just see here. So it says out of all these sold, 13% of all systems sold are iMacs, which seems a little high, all right? That's of all Macs. And then, but if we keep going, it says 11% of Macs that are sold are basically Mac Pros. That seems pretty high. But look at down here. It says all of the Macs sold. Mac Minis is only 1%, and Mac Studios is 1% of all Macs sold. All right? And of the desktops, it only makes up 4% of the desktops, meaning that 50% comes from iMac, 43% of all the desktops is Mac Pros, and then Mac Minis and Studios make up 4%. It's crazy, right? It's crazy data. So we look at this. I mean, this other data makes sense down here. Let's look at this. So this is interesting too, but I think it makes sense. Out of the units here, it's 46% of all the laptops are basically going to be the MacBook Airs, and then 54% are actually the MacBook Pros. That makes sense. Everyone thinks the Air outsells the Pro, and it does, the 13-inch. But don't forget, there's only one 13-inch. The 15-inch is just coming out. But there's also the 16-inch Pro, the 14-inch Pro, and even the 13-inch Pro, the older one. All those three computers are selling against that one 13-inch Air, right? Now it's going to change with the 15-inch. Those numbers are going to change, but that makes at least some sense. I even went out to Google itself, and I typed in what's Apple's best-selling laptop, and it says even though you think it's the Air, it turns out to be the MacBook Pro, with accounting for 54%. But again, the Pro has a number of models. The Air only had that one model up until recently with the 15-inch, which will change everything there. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about these numbers here. I mean, is it possible that they're only selling 8% are either Mac Minis or Mac Studios out of all desktops, Mac desktops that are being sold? Everyone complained about this data. You look in here, there's comments and everything, and this isn't true, this isn't true. So I looked today or a couple days ago, another article came out. They redid the data, new study, new tests, everything. This is from 9to5Mac, not me. 9to5Mac has this article in here. So we're going to scroll down again. This is by the same company, Consumer Intelligence Research Partners. All right, you can see it right there. I didn't do the data, so don't come after me. This is all the all the Macs being sold. So 43% are MacBook Pros. 34% are MacBook Airs. Again, that could make sense because it's one model versus the three, and let's just say that makes sense, even though that's a little, who knows. But this is interesting. So 10% of all Macs sold are iMacs, all right? 9% are Mac Pros, it says, and then it says Mac Minis only make up 3%, and Mac Studio is 1% of all Macs sold. So again, 4% of the total value of Macs on those two units. So let's say, I don't know what this means. I mean, a lot of people are saying maybe they're just saying not units sold, but maybe the total revenue, because like obviously Mac Studios and iMacs are more expensive than the Mac Mini. Mac Minis are $599 and iMac's $2,000, and those Mac Pros can be $5,000. Even if that's the case, these numbers don't make any sense. I mean, it's 1% versus 10. I don't think they're 10 times more expensive. I would think more Mac Minis are sold than the iMac for sure, just because of all the videos I make. I get way more views on Mac Minis. I get way more views on Mac Studios than I do on iMacs. And I also, the Mac Pro is that's a dying breed, obviously. This is from, I think, the last year. So obviously we know that the Mac Pro is going to go away now because they made the Mac Studio too good. So this may all change also in the future. But this is the prior thing we're talking about here. And I'm trying to break down why in the world is this the case, right? So, I mean, if you think it's just me, there's other popular websites out there. Here's one from Mark Ellis. He does a ton of different cool stuff with Apple products, and he's saying the same thing. This was from the last one, but he's saying, it should be noted that these aren't official sales numbers from Apple, and never divulge anything more than what this data means. But so it just says bad news for the Mac Mini, Mac Studio ? But he has the exact same questions I have. What does this data mean? What people are they sampling? Are they sampling the wrong people? Is their research way off? We don't know. But in the end of it, even if we take all of that away, what it does tell us is supposedly that the Mac Mini and the Mac Studio make up a very, very, very small percentage of all Mac sales, right? And if there's one thing that they were going to get rid of, obviously we would assume it would be the lowest selling product. Now, what I think might happen is I think since they made the Mac Studio so good this year, and the RAM on it can only go so high, and you don't really see a lot of benefit from the Mac Pro, they might discontinue the Mac Pro, and then it will raise the Mac Studio up to a higher level, right? Because more people will buy that. But I can't get my fingers or my mind wrapped around anything to do with like the Pro outselling the Studio, right? Or the Mac Mini. I mean, we know that's not true. We just don't know exactly what this data means. So if anybody out there has data that actually shows me differently than this, and there's links to that data like on reputable websites or anything like that, you tell me. You give me the data and I'll break it down and I'll find out more. But Apple doesn't give out the official numbers, all right? So it's very difficult to track this stuff. And I want to know. I mean, I'm as curious as you, and being someone that loves Apple products. I mean, the Mac Mini is one of my favorites. Mac Studio is something that I'm kind of going to be buying soon. So I want to know, are these products going to stick around? Are they not going to stick around? And I just need the real data. So don't beat me up on this. Again, this is not my data. I'm breaking it down for you. You guys leave comments and you tell me what you think. At the end of the day, I think we can all sit back and say, well, this is not true data and, whatever. But they did this is a real company that did the research here, and they went through all of the due diligence, supposedly, to get this data. Now, they could have sampled completely the wrong people, but how could the numbers be so far off that it's literally 1% or 2% or 4% of the total Macs sold fall into this category? I think it has to be somewhat correct in the sense that if this company even exists anymore, or if it has any, if it's reputable in any sense, it has to, and they're even putting it on, like I said, these big sites like 9to5Mac, and I've seen it even on Mac Rumors and things like that, the same kind of data. Where are they getting it from? I mean, is it that crazy out there? Is it the Wild West? So anyways, leave your comments. I'm going to wrap this up. It's gone on too long. You tell me, is this data correct? And if it is, the Mac Mini and the Mac Studio are in trouble, because why would Apple ever spend that much money on some product that makes them almost nothing? That's the question. I don't think it's true, but I need proof otherwise. Post in the comments. Let me know. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.